Good evening. I'm Harry Keeling. On behalf of Alaska Public Media and the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, welcome to Hangar Flying. This evening, our guest is Rob Tesker. Rob has a long and varied career in aircraft maintenance. He started out at UAA, where he received his A&P in 1991. Rob has worked for a number of companies in the business, including Flight Safety, Era Take Flight, Seaplanes North, and his current company, Flytech, which is on the shores of Lake Hood. Along the way, Rob earned his IA and private pilot certificate, where I think he told me he traded 100-hour inspections for flying time. Rob, welcome to Hangar Flying.
Great to be here.
Rob, winter's on its way. Nights are longer, temperatures are getting colder. Our viewers are pilots, mechanics, aircraft owners, and other aviation enthusiasts around the state. For those pilots, mechanics, and owners out there, what are some of the recommendations on winter flying and taking care of your aircraft? What are some of your recommendations?
Well, I would recommend people get their winter baffles installed and make sure their breather, the engine breather tube, is insulated properly, and make sure there's a little vent hole above the end of the breather tube in case the end of it freezes over.
Okay.
It's very important.
And we talked a little bit about the baffles, and I think you made a recommendation that people should refer to their POH. And I think the Cessna is only one I'm familiar with that says below 20 degrees.
Below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, yes. Right. And there's different baffles for different airplanes. Some of them have baffles on the intake. Some of them have them over the oil cooler. And some of them just have them to cover the front of the engine cowling.
Okay. You also talked about the possibility of primer nozzles plugging up.
Yes, primer nozzles, a lot of times you don't use them in the summertime or don't use them much, and then they can get plugged up with carbon and whatnot from the combustion of the engine, and so it's a good idea to make sure those are clear as well.
Okay. Wheel pants?
Wheel pants are interesting. You wouldn't think there'd be an issue, but when snow and ice get up in there, it can freeze up the brakes, and then the brakes don't work. And that can be a problem.
One of the things you and I have talked about a little bit was preheating.
Yes.
Your thoughts on that?
Preheating is a very good idea. Generally, below 32 degrees Fahrenheit is kind of the rule of thumb. It certainly does not hurt to preheat when it's a little warmer also. There's many different kinds of preheaters are out there.
So let's talk about that a little bit. It seems to me that a plug-in, if you got electricity, a plug-in is probably the safest, as opposed to. I mean, I've used plug-ins and Red Dragons, but Red Dragons, you need to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
Thoughts on that?
Well, the Red Dragon you got to keep an eye on because you've got basically a propane furnace heating up your engine. And the electricity ones you don't. And they also heat more thoroughly because you can heat each individual cylinder, the oil pan, and the case with the electric.
Someone once told me that there's another danger with Red Dragons. I never experienced it, but do you run the risk of, you've got electric wires in there, which are plastic. You've got plastic and rubber. Is there a danger of melting some of that stuff?
Absolutely. I've seen that happen where people melt engine components from the heat coming out of that Red Dragon because it wasn't placed in the right spot.
Which stuff it in the cow flaps, or what's the best thing?
Depending on the aircraft, it might make a difference. Sometimes it's best to shove it in the front of the cowling. Okay. Sometimes up the cow flap. It just depends on what the heat is blowing onto as to what's safe or not.
Good advice. What about techniques to clear the aircraft surfaces of ice and snow?
Well, of course, the best way to do it is to use the proper wing covers and engine covers and tail feather covers. You can sweep snow and frost off with a broom. Some people like to use a rope. Generally, that's not a good idea because you have antennas and vortex generators and such where a rope doesn't always work that well.
Okay. Another topic a little different, with the cold temperatures, what are your thoughts on possibility of shock cooling, particularly in bigger engines?
Well, you just want to make sure you don't descend very quickly. So a slow descent is recommended. And full rich mixture is also good, and it helps cool things.
Okay. I've got about now less than a minute. Anything else to add?
Dress for the weather. It's lots of people, they think they can go flying in their tennis shoes and a light jacket in the wintertime, but you might need to go for a mile walk after you land somewhere because you couldn't land where you thought you wanted to.
Or you might spend the night.
Or you might have to spend the night, and you don't want to get frostbite.
Rob, thanks for being on the program. Good advice for everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. Winter's coming, we know that for sure, and you need to take care of your aircraft. You need to take care of yourself, like Rob says, dress properly, and you need to fly safe. Until next time, fly safe.